Hi there, hope you're having a fantastic day. Thanks for clicking and tuning in. I've just been researching a lot more different other topics in the world. One thing I can't always sort of work out is the moon. There are many conflicting stories about the moon. And yes, I know the moon is mentioned in the Bible, but it hasn't always been there. In Genesis 1, it was Earth without a moon. Also in time before the moon in the scriptures is Job 25:5, the grandeur of the Lord who makes peace in the heights is praised. So all the time is mentioned before there was the moon and it did not shine. And also Psalm 72:5 is said thou wast feared the time of the sun and before the time of the moon. A generation of generations. Generation of generations means a very long time. Of course, it is of no use to counter the Psalms with the myth of the first chapter of Genesis. So Giordano Bruno, a 16th century Italian philosopher, is reputed to have written in De Menso that those who have believed that there was at a certain time, as some mythologian says, when the moon, which is to believe young to be then our sun, was not yet created, the Arcadians, who dwelt not far from the Po, and are believed to have been in existence before it, the moon. Theodorus writes in his first book that the moon had appeared a little while before the war, which was first fought by Hercules against the giants. Astrosis and Dionysus Calenius, I can't say that, sorry, in the first of their works can find the same. Men have said the Akkadians were born before the moon, and so they were called Proserpine, meaning before the moon. Bruno goes on to step it up on the sensibilities of the future scholars by noting the Earth, which is the same species as the moon, is of creatable and destructible substance, and is truly animal and even mortal, although divine. Therefore the planets, worlds, are able to be created and destroyed, and it's not possible that they have been eternal, since we have proved them to be alternatable and consisting of changing parts. Belakrosky has discussed the same idea by noting that one of the most remote recollections of mankind is in regard to the period of Earth's history when it was moonless. Belakrosky quotes everyone from Democritus to Aristotle and Apollonius of Rhodes to show that there was such pre-Hellenic time existed, that those humans living at a time are called, I'm not even going to try and say these. They were said to have dwelt in the mountains, fed on acorns, and lived as aborigines. Wrote of pre-lunar people, as did Ovid, who said that the Arcadians possessed their land before the birth of Jove and were older than the moon. There are even biblical references of Job 25:5 and Psalm 72:5 which allude to a moonless earth, or at least it can be so interpreted. Finally, the memory of a moonless earth is contained in oral traditions such as Indians, as those who go to highlands in the eastern of the Coralians in Colombia, according to the tribesmen of the Chibas, in earliest times when the moon was not yet in the heavens. The references to aboriginal nature of the pre-moon folk, and in fact they lived before the birth of Job, is particularly noteworthy, while Belakrosky and those scholars suggesting a moonless earth time have never made the apparent connection to the Sumerian records and the Anunnaki, many of whom, the later, have the date of birth or arriving in the embryos of Earth which would have occurred after the time of some of the Earth's original origines. In fact, the time of the moonless Earth might likely correspond to that time of when the Homo erectus was roaming about the planet, dwelling in mountains, eating acorns, and becoming the archetype for future aborigines. The possible assumption that the Arcadians were a civilization is without confirming evidence. In addition, the habit of the Sumerians to consider civilization and the world as interchangeable terms does not eliminate the Arcadian civilization as being essentially an aboriginal one. Meanwhile, all his stories tie together. All the pieces of the puzzle fit, provided, of course, there is no recarving of the puzzles to make them fit into an incorrect position. Given the distinct possibility of the Moon being a relative newcomer to the Earth's orbit around the Earth, an arrival apparently prior to the Anunnaki of Sumerian history, one might even consider seriously the even more radical suggestion of the Moon being artificial. In the section on lunatics, we consider the possibility of the Moon being an ideal spaceship, where one has all the comforts of home, including a vast collection of kitchen sinks, and all the same can enjoy observational status, where no one else, in particular arrogant humans, even suspects the existence of a nearby extraterrestrial intelligence. Is it possible that the Moon arrived from the Anunnaki, either initially or later when it appeared that an off-planet base was essential? Is this their lovely home away from home, which they could observe the goings-ons down below, while still enjoying the privacy from prying human eyes? Zachariah Stitchin and others have noted that there were Anunnaki watchers in space surrounding the Earth, and while it might be assumed that they were artificial satellites in near-Earth orbit, no one appears, until the writing of this essay, to have considered the artificial satellite upon the Anunnaki were doing their watching and administrating the transshipments of gold back to was in fact the Moon, and yet it makes total sense. Adam and Eve being lunatics is one case in point, where perhaps the genetic work of Enki and Nike was being conducted in an off-site location. The fact that Adam may have been preaching a worship of the Moon is just more evident of his possible birthplace and the location of his acknowledged creators. And please, no hate on this, I'm just trying to share some interesting research of Greek history I've been looking into. Richard Hoagland has suggested that the distinct differences between the near and far sides of the Moon may result of interplanetary or interstellar war damages, one side being blasted into seas, while the far side has no such similar damage. There is also the War of the Titans and sorts of warfare going on among the Anunnaki, especially in Niki and Eli, in earlier times. It might appear ancient history has not begun to scratch the surface of the possibilities of Anunnaki residing on the Moon in the early days, or as well as now. In a continuing series of prime directive violations, it is even possible that Holocaust's lunar anomalies are the remnants of that Anunnaki war, and that there still is an Anunnaki in residence on our Moon. Suddenly, the man in the Moon takes on a greater credibility. Furthermore, an Anunnaki-controlled artificial Moon might have allowed them to use it in some fashion to cause the Eden conditions or perpetual dawn on planet Earth. The Moon could even be where Enoch might have gone for his schooling at the Anunnaki University. One wonders what the prerequisites are of the mission requirements. Are really tough. A rampant curiosity might be important. Finally, the Anunnaki might have been the gods and goddesses of the Sumerian and ancient civilizations. It is also possible that the Anunnaki themselves might have had others to look up to and revere as superior beings. That may also be why they preferred the relative anonymity of having a natural-looking spaceship. Why not? New Scientist reports that while there is talk of a mission to Pluto and completing a project to visit the moon's south pole is causing concern among them. Notably, the moon's south pole is the location of the deepest crater in the solar system, at a place that potentially exposed the moon's mantle, known as the Atkin Basin. The crater is the oldest impact feature known. Such lunar mission's intent is to cast light upon the very early history of the Earth's moon system. Interesting. In the true spirit of conspiracies, it is possible that there is less interest in seeing the moon's mantle than in finding a door into the interior of the artificial moon and perhaps meeting the local lunatic innkeepers. This might be a good plan, but why not also investigate the Oriental crater located on the edge of what can be seen from Earth, yet included on maps on the far side, and precisely at the hyperdimensional physics magic latitude of 19.5, part of the moon's interior propulsion system. Hey, when it comes to speculation, sky's the limit, make that the moon. Yeah. Like, I don't know, but it's not to have a dig at God or creation or anything. It's just something I've been researching. It's not to have a dig at anyone or anything. Aristotle wrote that Arcadia in Greece, before being inhabited by the Hellenes, had a population of Pelagesians. They occupied the land. Yeah, this was mentioned in the other one. Apparently, some theories of the moon. The moon originated at the same time as Earth, being formed substantially from the same material, aggregating and solidifying. 2. The moon was formed not in the vicinity of Earth, but in a different part of the solar system and was later captured by the Earth. 3. The moon was originally a portion of the terrestrial crust and was torn out, leaving behind the bed of the Pacific. All these 3 theories claim the presence of the moon on an orbit around the Earth for billions of years. Mythology may supply each of these views with some support. Genesis 1 for the first view, the birth of Aphrodite from the sea for the third view, Aphrodite's origin in the disruption of Uranus and also the violence of sin. The Babylon moon seems to support the second moon view. Since mankind on both sides of the Atlantic preserved the memory of the time when the Earth was without the moon, the first hypothesis, namely of the moon originating simultaneously with the Earth and its vicinity, is to be excluded, leaving the other two hypotheses to complete between themselves. We have seen that the traditions of diverse peoples offer corroborative testimony to the effect that in a very early age, but until the memory of mankind, new moon accompanied the Earth. Since human beings already peopled the Earth, it is improbable that the moon sprang from it. There must have existed a solid lithosphere, not a liquid Earth. Thus, while I do not claim to know the origin of the moon, I find it more palatable that the moon was captured by the Earth. Such an event would have occurred as a catastrophe. If the moon's formation took place away from the Earth, its composition may be quite different. There is no evidence to suggest whether the moon was a planet, a satellite, or another planet, or a comet at the time of its capture by the Earth. Whatever atmosphere it may have had was pulled away by the Earth by other contacting bodies or dissipated in some way. Since the time of the moon began accompanying the Earth, it underwent the influence of contacts with comets, planets that passed near the Earth in subsequent ages. The mass of the moon being less than that of the Earth, the moon must have suffered greater disturbances and cosmic contacts. During these contacts, the moon was not carried away. This is due to the fact that no body more powerful than the Earth came sufficiently close to the moon to took it away from the Earth for good. But in other contacts that took place, the moon was removed repeatedly from one orbit to another. Yeah, see, I feel with the war in heaven that they talk about that there was a planet between Mars and Saturn that was blowing up, and the creatures that were on Mars causing that war came to the Earth and came through the hole when the firmament was cracked, when it flooded, when the water was spreading from above and the oceans come up from the pillars. That I feel like came through and came in that way. Like I've been told that the pyramids were built to fix the Earth's tilt. When it came in, it tilted the Earth by 15 degrees. And that tilt was fixed by the pyramids that lasted 20,000 years. And then they had catastrophes again. So, yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to share that and get some people's thoughts on it. I just add some things. So, without the moon, then also all mammals have a menstrual cycle to the moon. It controls the oceans. Yeah, there's more to the moon than we think. Nights would be much darker. The next brightest object in the sky is Venus, but it still wouldn't be light enough to light up the sky. The full moon is nearly 2,000 times brighter than Venus at its brightest. Without the moon, a day on Earth would only last 6 to 12 hours. There could be more than 1,000 days in 1 year. That's because the Earth's rotation slows down over time thanks to the gravitational force of the pull on the moon. Without it, the days would go by in a blink. Without the moon helping keep the Earth on a steady tilt, scientists imagine that life on Earth may have not involved in the way we know. Yeah, see, it's a tilt. I said it was 15 before, but it's actually, I think, 23.4 degrees is the tilt. So I'll show that one. So in the part here, it mentions some allusions to the time before there was a moon may be found in the scriptures. Job, the grandeur of the Lord, who makes peace in the heights, is praised, and the time is mentioned before there was a moon and it did not shine. Men Bildad and Shedai replied, Dominion and all belong to God. He established harmony in the heights of heaven. Can his troops be numbered? On whom does he not rise? Light not rise? How can a man be just before God? How can one born of a woman be pure? If even the moon does not shine, and the stars are not pure in his sight, how much less man, who is but a maggot, and the son of man, who is but a worm? Okay. So then it mentions Psalms 72:5. There was feared since the time of the sun and before the time of the moon, a generation of generation. Generation means a very long time. And thou, the king of your justice, O God, and the son of the king your righteous, may he judge your people with righteousness, you afflicted with justice. May the mountains bring peace to the people, and the hills bring righteousness. May he vindicate the afflicted among the people. May he save the children of the needy and crush the oppressor. May they fear him as long as the sun shines, as long as the moon remains through all generations. May he be like rain that falls, freshly cut grass, like the spring showers that water the earth. May be the righteous flourish in his days, and the prosperity abound until the moon is no more. May he rule from the sea to sea, and from the Euphrates to the ends of the earth. May the nomads bow before him, and his enemies lick the dust. May the kings of Tarshish and the distant shores bring tribute. May the kings of Sheba and Seba offer gifts. May all the kings bow down to him, and all nations serve him. For he will deliver the needy who cry out, and the afflicted who have no help. He take pity on the poor and the needy, and save the lives of the oppressed. He will redeem them from their oppress and violence, for their blood is precious in his sight. Long may he live. May gold from Sheba be given him. May people ever pray for him. May they bless him all day long. May there be an abundance of grain in the land. May it sway atop the hills. May its fruit trees flourish in the forests of Lebanon, and its people like the grass of the field. May his name endure forever. May his name continue as long as the sun shines in him. May all the nations be blessed. May they call him blessed. Lord God of Israel, who does marvelous deeds, and blessing your glorious name forever. May all the earth be filled with his glory. And then if we look at other cultures and their religion, I didn't know about this until now, but splitting of the moon is a miracle in a Muslim tradition attributed to the Islamic prophet Muhammad. It is derived from the Quran. Surah Al-Qamar verses and mentioned by Muslim traditions such as, I don't want to say these names wrong and get them wrong, upset people. Early traditions supporting the literal interpretation are transmitted on authority of companions of Muhammad such as all these people, Abdullah bin Mas'ud and others. According to the Indian Muslim scholar Abdullah Yusuf, the moon will split again when the day of judgment approaches. He says that the verse may have also part of an allegorical meaning, i.e. the matter has become clear as the moon. The Quranic verses were part of the debate between medieval Muslim theologians and Muslim philosophers over the issue of invulnerability of the heavenly bodies. NASA dismissed it. I'll leave the link in the description. Please don't be rude. We need to look at all humanity and all cultures. You need to have an open-minded. In this passage it says the hour of judgment is near, the moon cleft to surrender. But if they see a sign, turn away and say this is but transit magic. So apparently he's done some sort of thing, and says here post-classical commentator provides a list of early traditions mentioning the incident. A tradition transmitted in the authority states that Muhammad split the moon after pagan Meccas asked for a miracle. Another tradition from Malak, transmitted through other chains of narrations, mentioned that Mount Nur was visible between two parts of the moon. Muslims believe Muhammad received his first revelations from God in a cave of a mountain. Tradition narrated by authority with a single chain of transmission says that two parts of the moon stood on the two mountains. Tradition further says that the Meccan responded by saying Muhammad has taken us by his magic. If he were able to take us by magic, he would not be able to do so with all people. Traditions transmitted on his story briefly mention the incident and do not provide much details. So I won't get too much into it, but I'll leave that link in the description for you. This is in Genesis, by the light of the moon. Does Genesis 1:15 say that the moon emits its own light, as some skeptics claim? Relevant verse, Genesis 1:15. Let them, sun and moon, be for lights in the expanse of the heavens to emit light on the earth. Over the years, a number of skeptics have pointed to the verse and the claim that if the Bible were really the inherent word of God, it wouldn't make such basic mistake as to saying the moon emits light. The moon has not and does not, as far as we know, emit any sort of light. Instead, the rocky satellite simply reflects light from the sun. To uncover answers, consider how first the Earth-centric our discussions are. We say that the sun rises and sets, even though we know that the Earth actually revolves around the sun and rotates on it. Yeah, okay, whatever. Not getting into that. To us, the moon does give up light upon the earth. The fact that it does so by reflection rather than emission is not relevant to the biblical passage. Hebrew word used for emit, give light in this verse, or can mean both to all become light and to illuminate or become lighted up. Strong's 2:15. To demonstrate this word picture, imagine that someone uses a mirror to reflect light in your eyes. The ultimate source of the light is not the mirror, but the mirror appears to be bright to you because you're in the receiving end of the reflections. Taking this verse out of context can make it seem inaccurate, but when we step back out of Genesis 1:14 to 18, we understand more about the purpose of the passage. Other than providing light, God created the sun and the moon to mark the seasons, days, and the years, which they do quite well. Notice that the Bible does not provide detailed schematics and charts on how this works, since God gave humans the ability to discover through observational science. The purpose here is not to explain all in detail. Oh yeah, okay. Ultimately, the Bible does not say the moon emits light, only that it gives light upon the earth, which it does by reflection. The real message to take from the passage is that God created two spectacular heavenly bodies that are consistent reminders of his amazing power. This verse lets us know exactly what God intended, how the sun and moon came, why he did. Yeah, okay. Didn't help much. The moon is more complicated than anyone expected. It's not just a frozen billiard ball in space at time. Many scientists believe the moon is far older than imagined. Some have ventured out to say it might be older than planet Earth. The moon has 3 distinct layers of rock, contrary to the idea of that heavier objects since heavier rocks are found on the surface and the gap defined in the distribution of minerals. The moon is very dry and does not seem that it had at some point substantial amounts of water. None of the lunar rocks, regardless of where they were found, contain traces of water. or even water molecules bound to minerals. Apollo 16 astronauts found rocks containing pieces of rusty iron. Since oxidation requires oxygen and free hydrogen, this rust indicates that the water should be somewhere on the moon. Strangely, instruments were left by the Apollo mission sent a signal to Earth on March 7, 1971, indicating that wind containing traces of water had swept across the lunar surface. Since the water on the surface without air is vaporized, it behaves like wind on Earth. The question was where this water originated. If the Earth and the Moon were created at the same time, close to one another, how come one body, the Earth, has great amounts of iron, while another body, the Moon, has very little of it? Astrophysics are unable to explain exactly how the Moon became a satellite of Earth. Evidence suggests that the Moon may be hollow. Moon rocks studies indicate the interior of the Moon differs from the mantle of the Earth. This is scientific. That's what they think it could be. And I think it's a soul trap, to be honest. I think the Moon is keeping us in a trap of reincarnating. A natural satellite cannot be a hollow object. The most incredible evidence that suggests the Moon could be hollow came on November 20, 1969, when Apollo 12 crew, after returning their command ship, sent a lunar module ascent stage crashing back into the Moon, creating an artificial moonquake. Crashed into the surface about 40 miles from Apollo 12 landing site, where ultra-sensitive seismic equipment recorded something both unexpected and astounding. The Moon reverberated like a bell for more than an hour. The vibration and waves took almost 8 minutes to reach peak, then decreased instantly, something no one had expected to occur. Experts were more surprised about the Moon when the lunar rocks were found to contain traces of bronze, mica, amphibole, and almost pure titanium. According to the Argonite National Laboratory, uranium-236 and neptunium-237 elements that were not previously found in nature were discovered in the Moon rocks. Scientists were baffled when they discovered the presence of rust-proof iron particles in soil samples from the Sea of Crisis. So yeah, it is mentioned. They mention about the harvesters and all that kind of stuff. But it's just an interesting topic, I find. You know, everyone says about Genesis here. Okay, is it possible to have no full moon in February during a leap year? Everyone knows there can be 2 full moons in a month. It is possible to have no full moon in February containing 28 days. Yes, but only 4 times in a century. This happened in 1999 and will occur in 2018. Assuming the phases are expressed in universal time, when February has no full moon, January and March typically have 2 full moons each. The second being widely hailed as a blue moon. Much rarer is the 29th day of February in a leap year with no full moon. According to Peter MacDonald, Journal of British Astronomical Association, December 1998, page 324. This oddity occurred in 1608 and won't happen again until 2572. There you go. But yeah, I don't want any hate on this. I'm just sharing. I've heard from many pastors speak about this topic. So yeah, I know it's mentioned in the Bible, but I'm talking about these people before. Anyway, thanks for watching. Much love. Bye. This is the spot I was talking about, Amy. This is where I think it landed. I think it came in here. People call this Atlantis, but it's not. The moon's not as big as we think it is either. Whatever's happened here has just killed it. Like, Roger Spurr thinks that this is a great big fish and that there's a dragon. See, he thinks this part, see this here, that there, he thinks that's a fish. And he said this is a dragon's mouth biting the fish. And there's the eye and the flutes and the dragon comes up along here. On the other Google Earth image you can see it a bit better. It spans all the way up along here, Tunisia, ends about here. So yeah, I'll leave a link in the description, but yeah, he just doesn't seem to believe in the Bible yet. He does believe in everything else. So I'm not doing this to hate or anything, but just sharing my thoughts. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.